Welcome back to Timeless Mindset. In this episode, we have a solo episode. I'm going to go through some of the questions from the audience, give you a slight update on the podcast. In all seriousness, I've actually restarted this episode 2 times. I've done about 2 or 3 minutes I've started and I restarted. And I'm calling myself out now because something I've been focusing on is trying to embrace my human imperfection. And here we are again, trapped into this perfectionist tendency to always get it right and say things in the right way. However, I look back at the 2 starts that I had and there was nothing fundamentally wrong with how I went about them. I just noticed that sometimes the more you want to perform, because I made this commitment to the podcast where I'm going to invest heavier time and emotional energy into this thing because I truly love it and I want to continue on my mission to spread these messages, empower other people, empower myself, continue to learn and create conversation. So I've put this conscious emphasis on trying to do the thing, do more podcasting, have better episodes. And therefore, as a byproduct, I've created this expectation now that things have to be more elevated. Everything needs to be more articulate. Things need to be on point. There has to be flow. And therefore, I've created more resistance to being human, which is fundamentally what we are. We make mistakes. We don't get it right. We learn from failures. And what I do is you sabotage your human process of growth and living and being and enjoying the ride because I was unwilling to accept the fact that the podcast journey is imperfect, and that's totally okay. And what we're here to do is create a library of conversations that can help people, including myself, discover what we truly are as humans, which is in our innate freedoms and capabilities. And I think while this show has an emphasis on building a mindset, part of my recent evolution has been discovering what we have inside of us already. And a lot of that is just removing these blockages that we create, and people refer to limiting beliefs. A lot of the time we go through experiences and conditioning which create a program within ourselves which actually limit us from being who we truly are. And while this podcast is heavily on building a stronger mindset, a shift that I'm consciously making is trying to discover and let go of this need to do and prescribe myself with this long list of things I need to do in order to grow the podcast or grow and change as a human being, and more focus on removing fear and stripping away this prescription and this constant pressure to become a certain somebody, and rather just embrace my natural evolution. So it's going to be some of the themes we go through in today's podcast is a lot around removing these programs that come into our life through our experiences, questioning the questions, and finding our true nature. So I look forward to these questions. So let's dive straight into it. The first one is, why do people choose to assume things about me? And the first thing I'm going to, when I read that question, I thought, in that question, there's elements of attack. Why do people choose to assume things about me? So when you see how the question is framed, you can see that it is creating this dynamic where someone is consciously deciding to attack you, and you are the victim in your own reality. So I'm questioning the question because I think people do not consciously choose to assume things. I think it suits and aligns with their own narrative and how they see the world. So when people jump to conclusions, they're not jumping to conclusions in their own mind. It's just in your mind, you know that they're jumping to conclusions, and their assumptions, the false assumptions they have made, have been created from their own perspective and their own story. But I think the first thing is you need to strip away this righteousness that is created when you have a different perspective or appreciation. So what I mean by this is when I started to develop myself and I started to grow and educate myself in different areas, I also developed pride or self-righteousness that I know what's best. And in that is sort of this, you lose compassion because you develop pride of I know what's best, and you start to feel like anyone who has any sort of negative energy towards you is consciously doing that, because as you become more aware, sometimes you also create this storyline that if people aren't playing life to how you want it now because you are consciously choosing to become the creator of your reality, you want to create and build the life you want, anyone who stands in opposition to that is consciously doing that to bring you down. So I think we have to give people compassion to say people live to the limits of their awareness, because while you also have a heightened consciousness and awareness to how you live now and what you do with your time and energy, you're also shaming the part of yourself which was more unaware and more unconscious. So when I did a lot of change, so to make this more practical, I used to gamble a lot. I lost a lot of money. I used to numb my emotions with poor habits and vices. And what I noticed my brain doing is I was very, very judgmental of people who did that. And I had little compassion. I was very prescriptive. I wanted to tell people what to do. And yes, I understood logically that that was not a kind and loving thing to do, but I just had this drive within me to want to point fingers. And the reason I did that is because I was not willing to show love to the parts of myself who were at that time lived within the limits of their awareness. So I didn't have better strategies to create certain things in my life. For example, a lot of the time people go to things like alcohol, drugs, gambling as a strategy to get something. Now, the reason they go to that is because they do not have a healthier coping mechanism. Now, we judge them because we know from an outsider's perspective that is not a healthy thing to do, but they are in this addiction state to receive a certain feeling, a certain chemical that gets created within the body, and we judge them because we know from an outsider's perspective that is not a healthy thing to do. However, we also have to realize the reason we judge them is because we're also judging a part of ourselves which is being mirrored in them. Now, I was quick to judge people, but I was slow to realize that while I was pointing one finger at them, I was pointing three fingers back at myself. And it's important to realize that anytime you judge someone else, you're judging a part of yourself. And another important caveat is to not judge the part of yourself which is judging yourself. So if you start feeling judgmental towards others, it's very easy to almost start feeling guilty, like, why am I judging them? That's so mean of me. I'm not compassionate and loving. We need to embrace our humanity. The reason that we have judgment is because it helps our own mind and body create an understanding of the world. We need to develop more curiosity, and that's what I've been trying to do, is ask questions, try and unpack why I see the world the way I do. Now, everyone sees the world in a different way. There's over 8 billion people. There's over 8 billion perspectives of how we see the world. And the reason stories and conversations are so important, and the reason I love them, is because we're able to see different vantage points of the world. We get to see how people see the world in different ways. And then we also start to relate that back to our own experience, and that gives us insight and growth. So trying to link this back to the question, why do people choose to assume things about me? Now, just remember, within that, you are judging them as well. So you say you're choosing to assume things about me, but you're also in that same question assuming that they are consciously deciding to attack you. So can you notice the paradox in that? It's like you're asking a question of why do people judge me, but you are judging them in the same way. So we also need to give love to the part of ourselves which instinctively and defensively reacts to attack, and show ourselves some love and embrace like human growth, because what I've struggled to do is embrace the side of me that didn't know any better. And it's that simple. We didn't know any better. You know, I gambled, I had these bad vices because I didn't know better. I didn't have the tools, the resources, and I shamed myself. And part of self-improvement is almost flawed in nature, because while you're trying to change, you're also trying to forget half of who you were. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with you and who you are right now. You just need to discover the love that is already within you, and everything you have in your life right now is giving you an insight into what you truly are after. So that conversation itself goes off in a slightly different direction. So I'm not going to say that, but we're not going to go there. However, it's important to realize that when we ask questions, sometimes the answer is in the question itself. And it's crazy to think that, but a lot of the time, the reason we ask a certain question is because the answer and the gold is right there in the question. We just need to be willing to turn around and look at who is asking the question and why the question is being asked in the first place. But I think a lot of people do just lack that genuine curiosity, because to change your programming to see the world in a different way, it takes a lot of courage to do that. So I implore you to keep asking questions and also look at the question in a different way. Question the question is another one. So next question is, how do I find my purpose? This is a great question. It's going to be the word of the show, question. I think purpose is something we're all magically after. I think there's a society expectation where if you find your purpose, then I'll be problem-free and happy. And I've fallen into that trap of like, if I find my purpose, I found my purpose in helping people and sharing these messages. My life's sorted, I've got it all. And I think that's our human fallacy, to try and remove problems rather than realize there is, as human, that is fundamentally a feature of being a human. There are problems, and I think we need to embrace the side of ourselves that continues to face them and explore them with love rather than judgment and criticism and this fear of having them in our lives. And instead of seeking to remove them, I think we need to seek to understand them. So purpose is a great one, because I think practically, a lot of us realize we need money, we need a career, but we also are very aware that we want to be fulfilled and we want to love what we do. And if you love what you do, then it's not a job, right? That's the common messaging we hear. I think the first thing that I would do, or advise anyone trying to find more of their purpose, is almost to remove this expectation that they've subconsciously created, that if they find their purpose, then they will have certain outcomes. And a lot of these outcomes are to do with this emotional freedom that is guaranteed. If you find my purpose, then I'll have jobs and money and this reputation will come along. And I think people don't understand that having a purpose is about living true and aligned to who you are. And it's linking your mission, your personal mission, with your action and time. Because when you find your purpose and you can dedicate more time to it, life feels more fulfilling because you're investing time into things that are more authentic to you and aligned with your personal mission, whatever that entails. And for me, it's speaking about meaningful things related to mindset, life, authenticity, growth, all of this. This is what fulfills me as a human, because it relates to my own experiences. It relates to what I've always been curious about. But I want to give you some practical ways to actually discover purpose. I just wanted to help you realize that there is actually nothing missing in your life right now. The reason you haven't found your purpose is because you're resisting it at some subconscious level. There is fear associated with having your purpose, because when you do find your purpose, now there is a responsibility to adhere to it. So part of you blocks yourself from finding and discovering it, because it's like, okay, Egan, if your mission was to create a podcast and spread these messages, would your conscious mind really want to have the responsibility of putting your face on the internet, exposing yourself to criticism and judgment and people's opinions? It's like, what we don't realize is what we want is on the other side of fear, and this fear is protecting us, and it's unconscious. So when I say, how do I find my purpose? You already have your purpose. It's about removing the fear that is blocking you from finding it. And there is a lot of messaging about you create your purpose, you become so good at something you created. And yes, I totally agree. There is a practical element of when you get good at a skill, it gives you confidence and you feel good about it. However, I truly believe that everyone has these enough experiences and enough innate, authentic missions. That makes absolutely no sense, Egan. I think people at a fundamental level have enough evidence and information in their life to unpack what truly matters to them. They just need to be able to ask the right questions, and it's very difficult to do yourself. That is why most people either seek coaching, talk to their friends, start having real conversation and dialogue about it, and then trying new things, and that helps them create this feedback loop of trying new things. How does it make me feel? How does it align to my values or what I think are my values? Because if you value something, you will do it. And I think a core piece of finding your purpose is realizing that your purpose is discovered and not created. And whether you agree with that or not, that's fine. And whether I'm open to my mind being changed. However, I've seen enough in people to realize that people know what they want to do. They have the answers inside of them, and it's about stripping away the fear. So when I say, how do I find my purpose? I think you need to embrace your human side. You need to be willing to try, which also exposes you to fear of failure. So it's all about the obstacle is the way sort of mentality, where the thing you want is on the other side of the thing you fear. So you fear not finding your purpose. Your purpose is found when you're willing to not find it. So when you're willing to try something that might not be the thing designed for you, you are more likely to get closer to what it is, because your purpose will be revealed and discovered in this search, rather than this, I guess, inbuilt story that you've created that I need to have my purpose because I hate my job. And I think there's a lot to unpack with individuals, and everyone has a different story and how it relates to their own purpose. And depending on who it is would how I would ask certain questions and be curious to know why you see purpose in a certain way. But just to link back to the question, how do I find my purpose? I think that covers most of it. Remove the fear, be willing to be human and not have your purpose figured out. It will come to you, I guarantee you. You'll know what feels right. There is a certain feeling and embodiment. I'll also give one practical note. My friend Mitchell Vickridge came on a podcast episode, and he talks about this thing using the DeMartini method. It's called mission and personal mission related to purpose. So your personal mission is your purpose, why you do something at a deep level. And within the word mission is missing the ion. So an ion is a charge, a positive or negative charge, and it's normally to do with emotions, like a positive euphoria, negative depression, for example, on two extreme scales. And I think when you talk about your purpose, it's important to reflect on times you're in flow state, you feel most present, you feel in the zone, as they call it. There is not a euphoric nature to it, too extreme, or there's not a depressive, chore-like discipline need to do this because I have to do it. There's a certain flow and curiosity and a thread that needs to be, gripped and pulled, because it's like a calling almost. And you've probably gone through enough experiences, if you're listening to this podcast, to be able to reflect on moments in time where you have felt cold. You've just felt this like invisible thread that you've had to pull. And in the process of reflection, you'll find that nothing is missing. You have all the answers you're looking for inside of your experiences, because your experiences give insights into who you authentically are. And I think the best way is to introspect rather than try and find something in the outer world to align to you. I think it's more about figuring out what's inside, and then as a result, mirroring the inside to the outside. And I think that's how you make your reality from the inside out, rather than from fear. I think naturally inside of us is love, and I think outside of us we see fear. So when we look to the outside, we bring that fear and the conditioning inside of us, and it starts to thwart our innate ability to, flow and be a human being. And we start being a human becoming, where we have to become a certain somebody to feel love and be good enough in order to feel worthy. And we go through all of this conditioning, which forces us to feel like we're not enough. And part of finding your purpose is discovering that nothing is missing. And if you miss the ion, you are likely to be where you are meant to be. So yeah, what parts of your life is there just a flow to? Why? And it's probably because it's truly aligned to what you want to do with your life. And if you can strip away the fear, the charge will drop. And if you're still doing that thing, then it's authentic and aligned. However, this can be a difficult process to do yourself, and that's why coaching is very important. And there are very skilled people out there, like Mitchell Vickridge, helping people discover what's already there. And that's part of his whole message: perfection in the pain. There is nothing missing. You have what you want. And I truly believe there is so much accuracy with that viewpoint. Next question. being an athlete and then getting injured, how to cope/avoid depression. Now, I've been a quote-unquote athlete, or I've been someone who really loves sport and put a lot of time and energy into becoming, quote-unquote, here you go again, becoming better. And part of the reason I wanted to become better was because I resisted not being perfect. So what did I want? I wanted to perform. So what did I do? I need to become better. And then I resisted the parts of me that weren't good. And then I was unable to have what I needed, which was performance, because I was resisting what I am not. So the things that we truly want are on the other side of removing the resistance that is innate within us. That is not saying stop training, stop trying to improve your skill set. It's just saying that as humans, we have emotions and we have an addiction to staying in a pattern. And part of improvement, as they call it, from a skill-based, is resisting the part of ourselves which is scared to have what we already have. And there is a reason that we aren't able to see the things inside of us, is because our conscious mind gets filtered through a fear mechanism that has been inbuilt into us. So part of that is questioning the program that is inbuilt into us and realizing there is nothing wrong with us and there is nothing wrong with what we're doing with our sport and our life. But I do want to unpack it from a practical standpoint, because a lot of this this word can be a game of semantics and a bit gibberish. I do want to give some practical elements. Part of it is just a huge over-identification with sport. And the reason, for example, the reason someone becomes depressed when they get injured is because they're over-identified with it. And it's the feedback mechanism to let you know that you are over-identified with it. The reason you become depressed and feel negative emotions when you get injured in sport is to help you realize that you are putting too much of your worth into the sport. So it's a negative feedback It's a negative feedback mechanism to help alert you that you are over-identified. So you have to be willing to see that as an indication that you are looking at your life and yourself in relation to sport in a feared way. Because it's like, if I perform in sport, if I have this athlete identity to mask my fears and my deeper self being exposed, then what am I going to do? A lot of the time is because the athlete label is a great front to what's behind it. Behind the athlete is a human being. And if we put out the athlete front, it prevents us from having to put ourselves out there at a deeper level, because we just identify as the athlete. I'm Egan Brooks, the footy player. And I did that for a long time, because it's like, oh, so what do you do? Oh yeah, I play footy. And it's like, no, yes, you value football, health and fitness, and you put a lot of time into that. But there is someone that sits way beyond that, and that is your true self. And I, Egan Brooks, am scared to put that out there. So as a defense mechanism, I have this label called the athlete. And therefore, when the athlete gets injured, he starts fearing that the true self will get exposed, and we feel the depression because it is giving us, it's a feedback mechanism to alert us that we have over-identified with our athlete label. So when we look at how to cope and avoid depression, I think you need to question why these emotions are so strong in the first place. Like, at the end of the day, does someone need to be a successful athlete to be happy? Would you tell your friend you are not permitted to, you are restricted from being happy because you didn't perform or you're injured? What would you say to them? I'm sure you'd give them the love and support that they deserve, which is true, that you embrace their imperfection, yet you hold yourself to a different standard because at a deeper level, you have programmed into yourself a contract that if you succeed at sport, then you will be happy and loved and worthy. Now, the athlete label, the reason that we put an athlete mask on is because, one, we love sport, so it fits to our values. And two, it's just a protection mechanism, as I said before. So being an athlete and then getting injured, and injury sometimes is the best thing to happen to you. I've been injured a few times, and a lot of the time the reason I got injured was because I attracted the injury into my life, because getting injured helped me see that I was over-identifying with the sport. And it's a moment in time, do I double down into my identity and do I fall into a depression and then the only way to remove the depression is to push even harder with the sport? Or does this moment in time help me realize and reflect that my true self sits beyond this label, this construct that I've created in order to protect myself from feeling vulnerable to people's judgment, because the persona cannot feel love, it can only receive praise. So will I go in and will I look at myself at a deeper level, or will I continue to double down into this athlete label? And I think I broke my ankle one year and I continued to identify. I actually fell into a depressive state. Like, people told me at the time, you're going to spend all this time studying now, your grades going to go up. My grades suffered. I didn't like who I was. I wasn't happy. So was that a perfect opportunity for me to introspect and figure out who I am at a deeper level? Yes. Did I take it? No, I didn't. It took me years and years to figure it out, because it's an addiction. It's an addiction to hoping that if you achieve something, if you uphold this label of who you think you need to be, then you'll be happy. At a deeper level, the reason you are depressed is because you don't know who you are on a deep level. You're not fulfilled. You haven't discovered who you are. You're not going to create who you are by being the athlete. You're going to discover who you are by stripping away the fear and the conditioning, which tell you you need to achieve, you need to prove that you are worthy enough. That is the story and the narrative that has been wired in through your selective experiences. You are perceiving that the only way to gain a removal of this depressive state is to bridge the gap between where you are and where you need to be. There is even logically speaking, that if I asked you, if someone else got injured, one of your friends got injured and they were depressed, if I asked you the question, do you really think that their livelihood, their well-being, their happiness should be thrown away simply because they can't play a sport? And often a sport is just a silly thing where a couple of people kick around a ball or whatever the sport is. Do you really think they should rob them of their human existence and their consciousness and their whole life simply because they can't participate in a sport? You would say, no, that is ridiculous. That is unbelievable that their whole well-being would be thrown out of the park. And yet you do it to yourself. You torture and shame yourself, and you ridicule yourself. You criticize yourself. You attack yourself. You put yourself into this hole because you fundamentally think that you are different to other people in the sense that you are an exception to the rule. That is the story and the survival mechanism, and that is the ego in play at its best, trying to think that it is different and fundamentally separate from other people. So I would ask you how to cope and avoid depression. Practically, how would you talk to your friends? Realize this is an opportunity to figure out who you are. It could be the biggest blessing in your life because you won't have to spend the next 10 to 15 years playing a sport out of fear and hoping that if you achieve something, then you'll be happy. You can probably notice some elevated emotion and tonality with the athlete one because I heavily resonate, and there's still parts of me trying to love the parts of myself that I shame for so many years for being imperfect, for making mistakes in the sport. You have to embrace the human side of you. Not only that, it'll make you a way better athlete in the long run because it gives you a chance to reflect on your systems and your habits. So use it as a time to reflect on the system side of your sport, so your training, your habits, your health, but also the human side. Realize that it's just a sport. It is not you, and it's often a label, a protective mechanism. So what an opportunity. And best of luck too. And show yourself some love and compassion because that is totally not what I did when I was going through it. I shamed myself. And then I also started to criticize myself for being hard on myself. So even when you naturally react and your ego comes into play to protect you, embrace that side of you. Realize that that is a revelation of where you're currently at. It is showing you what you currently perceive to be your reality. So your reality is I need to be a successful athlete to be happy. So when you have a reaction, your ego flares up to a situation, realize that's giving you an indication to where you currently perceive your reality. So that's an insight. It's an opportunity to reflect. Now, we automatically judge that part of ourselves again. So the ego flaring up is a judgment. So we're judging ourselves because we think we need to be a certain somebody or achieve something to be happy, and then we judge the judgment. And that's where the shame comes in. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. I can't just be happy. I need to be a good athlete. So embrace all of it with love and compassion. Realize that this is a human experience that we all go through. I've gone through it. Everyone goes through it in their own way. People do this exact same thing with business, with relationships. You're not alone, and welcome to being human. It's part of it. And what are you optimizing for? If you're optimizing to be happy and love life, why would you sacrifice that just to achieve something to feel that same thing? And that's what I constantly ask myself. Why am I sacrificing the thing I want in order to achieve something that is meant to give me something I want? So if I wanted to, play the highest level of, let's say, football, so AFL, I'm going to be happy when I play AFL. Now, just remember that people don't consciously think this. No one, if you ask someone, you're only going to be happy when you play AFL? And they're like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm so unhappy right now. I want to play AFL. I want to be happy. It is a subconscious program. They're not thinking of this. They have written themselves into these contracts unwillingly that if they achieve something, then they'll be happy. Now, we need to show ourselves love and compassion because through our experiences, through our parents, through our peers, through society, this is the messaging our younger self absorbed and then believed it had to do. So we need to show ourselves some love. This is just such an innate, programmed mechanism where we think we have to achieve and be a successful athlete to be happy. But start to question that drive. Like, why would I compromise what I'm after just to achieve something so I can feel something? Yes, performance, being an athlete, we love it. We love the sport. But most of my sporting career was full of fear. Like, a lot of it I didn't enjoy. And the reason I'm now coming back to sport after taking some time away is because I want to have fun. That's why I play it. Fundamentally, is it's fun. And I think now with a different mindset, I'm really excited to see how it goes. And I'm not putting any expectation on if I react a certain way, I get angry or emotional, that's okay. I don't need to judge the judgment. Embrace it, be curious, discover it, work with experts who can help you unpack these things. And at the end of it, you're going to enjoy the sport more. And as a byproduct, you are going to perform incredibly high because you're going to play with your heart and play with flow. And you're going to get out of your head and thinking, I need to do this, I need to be this, blah, 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 blah. And that's what gets you stuck and rigid. And yeah, that's my take on athlete injury. We're going to segue into what is the meaning to life. Now, I'm not going to sit here at a podcast table and say that I have the answers or meaning to life. I think that is a very profound question and something that I'm discovering more and more each day. I'll give my answer practically rather than prescriptively or retrospectively. So what is the meaning to life? I actually think part of the meaning I'm discovering is discovering. Like, there's the creation element, like you get to create things in your life that are visible and tangible, but the argument comes from a spiritual standpoint of, okay, did you just discover how to create that? Is that more a discovery than a creation? And I think a lot of life is discovering love and discovering abundance and discovering what already is, and it's just removing our ability to block ourselves from feeling that. A lot of my journey so far has just been like stripping away this tendency I have to remove what already is, which is love and abundance in different ways. And yes, life is challenging and there is hard shit going on. However, I just think there's a massive difference in my life between what is and the suffering component is. Like, it is what it is a common mantra, right? Which is reality. Sometimes it's not easy, but I think there's a suffering where we become addicted to the story of what it means for our life because we have all of these prescriptions and programming which tell us what we need to have in order to be happy. So we dissociate from reality because there's this story that we have created that we don't have what we need to have. We should have more. We need to have a healthier relationship. We need to have this. And within the messaging of that need, we lose our ability to discover what is already there because we're resisting what already is. And I am by means an expert at this in terms of embodiment because it's a journey that I'm on. It's a journey I love being on. That's why I do what I do, because I discover more and more about life and freedom and love and opportunity and growth. And I get to put out these messages which hopefully inspire and create that in other people's lives. And I work as a coach and mentor on the side as well. And I love that because it's a very similar thing where it's about discovering and yes, people create things in their lives, but they discover the ability to do it, which creates it as downstream from that. But it's the discovery as a result of stripping away the fear that has been programmed and conditioned into them, which breaks you free from this invisible prison that you've created. Are we perfect? No. If you become perfect, you lose the ability to relate to other people, and you don't want to be perfect. Part of being imperfect is being human. It's a feature. It's not a bug. It's not something that's wrong with us. It's something that is normal. And I think shame is a common hard emotion that a lot of us experience, which is there is something fundamentally wrong with me. I am flawed. I am wrong. I am unworthy of love because of, and then list out 100 different things people can go through. But part of that is realizing that all of those things you're listing are not true at all. They are stories. They are prisons that you have created to keep you stuck in this narrative. And the reason we do it is because it's a survival mechanism, one. It keeps us in our ego. But it's just something that has been programmed into us. So part of what I like to try and inspire is help people discover that they can escape the prison. They have the key inside of them. But some people can shine a light on that key. And some people can give and hopefully prod people towards finding it. And that's why I love doing what I'm doing. I can't live your life for you. You can't live my life for me. However, we can hold up these mirrors and we can hold up these conversations for each other which help introspect. I think fundamentally those who have the courage to explore the darkness will find the light. And I just made that up, but it just makes sense. It's like we all have light within us, and light representing love and abundance and positive growth and change. I think you just have to be willing to wander the wilderness inside and embrace the human side. And for me, the biggest change I found was when I was willing to not be perfect. You can't resist what you're after. If you resist what you're after, you're not going to have it. Because what's a practical example of this? I'm trying to think of a practical example, but like we are experts at trying to remove the thing we need in order to discover what we already have inside of us. And I think like Mitchell Vickridge came on the podcast and he talked about like the addiction is a therapy because it helps bring to the surface our over-identification with certain parts of our life. So like when I refer back to the athlete, like when the athlete gets injured and the emotions start to come up, depression, sadness, disappointment, frustration, grief, these are indications that you are over-identified. It's revealing how you currently perceive your life and your story. And it gives you an opportunity to create what you want, which is freedom and love and peace and happiness. It brings the problem to you. But you think that is the problem, but it's actually the solution. The problem is the solution. But what we do is we don't look at it as the problem is the solution. We look at it as the problem is the problem, and I need to create more of what I don't have, rather than the problem is my resistance to the problem itself. And it's just a mind thing. It's about seeing something differently. Like, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And the same thing with all your problems in your life. When you see your problems as blessings and opportunities, it gives you way better. And is life challenging? Fuck yeah, of course. And people are going through the depths of despair. But until you go through certain challenges and navigate certain things, you won't realize that heaven on earth is a natural and abundant state that we can all, in our own way, experience. And that's the beautiful thing. That's when we talk about what's the meaning to life. That's a lot of what I'm doing. It's just trying to create more of that consciousness for everyone to experience. And I'm by no means an expert. I'm just on a journey, and I'm on a journey with everyone. That's what we're all here to do. And shame is an emotion I've experienced a lot in a form part of my life. And I don't experience as much shame now because I'm realizing that what's personal is universal. We're all experiencing this. We're all very, very similar to each other. And that's a beautiful thing. Our ego wants to convince us that we're different because we want to be special. But because we want to be special, we resist being the same. And because of that, as a result, we feel indifferent. And as a result of feeling indifferent, we feel alone and in our suffering. So it's like, yeah, we just need to look at things different. And that's been a massive part of my journey. Okay, last question, and I think it's going to be pretty similar. is how do I be more patient? I think patience is similar to the reason we're not patient is because we're resisting what is. And we resist what is because we've created a story that we need to achieve, attain, accumulate something in order to feel enough. So the reason we're not patient is because of an expectation. And this expectation has stemmed from programming, and that programming often comes from experiences and our culture and society. So how do we be more patient is stripping away fear, questioning the program, questioning why you need it in the first place, questioning what parts of yourself are going to be changed if you have and attain this certain thing. So for the podcast, for a long time, I do want to have a big podcast, but I'm okay if I don't. And there's a fundamental difference between the two because yes, I want it because it helps me elevate my mission, helps me spread this, helps bring other things in. However, I'm okay if it doesn't. And that's it. I think it's an important thing to realize that you need to surrender to your resistance of needing the thing, because when you need it, it comes from fear, and you're also thinking you don't have it because I want a bigger podcast, but then I also don't realize the abundance I already have, which is my current audience, which is also the fact I'm even on this journey, spreading these messages. It's like we're constantly looking for more and we resist what we have. And because we resist what we have, we don't create and attract more of what we already have. That because we're looking to what we don't have. So we see that. And there's a chemical effect in the body, chemical cascade, where we start to generate these emotions and these, Joe Dispenza loves talking about this. And it's so true because we have these thoughts of, I don't have enough. And it creates these emotions of lack in the body, creates these chemical signatures. And then we start becoming addicted to this prison of lack. And part of abundance is putting our attention to what we have, synchronizing our emotions and our thoughts and creating coherence between mind and body and realizing that we nothing's missing. And then by doing that and by allowing ourselves to appreciate what we have, we just subconsciously, as a result, generate more of it. And this is one of my biggest challenges. And this is what I am trying and discovering to do. And it's also not judging the part of myself that is still very ambitious at a conscious ego-centric level, wanting to have success, not judging that, being okay with that, but being curious as to why that part of me exists. Because part of it is very authentic and loving, because I want to have a bigger podcast because I want to inspire more people. So why would I judge such a beautiful part of myself just because a part of that is fear? And it's not black or white. You don't just live from fear and love. There is elements of both. There's shades of both. And life is very grey. Yet our conscious, our amygdala mind, our fear brain wants to see the world black or white, which is run towards pleasure or run away from pain, go towards pleasure or away from pain. So part of being more patient, for example, is realizing that a lot of it is just enduring and being okay with not having it and not resisting what isn't. And by doing that, you focus on what you have. And this is a timely process. It's not something that just happens overnight. It's a skill. It's something you need to rewire your subconscious, change the limiting beliefs. This is a long journey. Sometimes there can be light bulb moments and things can change very, very quickly. When you change your perceptions and your program, you can do it quickly, but a lot of things can take a lot of time because they're very imprinted. One of the underlying currents that I would suggest is to embrace and be compassionate during this process, because I'm trying to do that for myself too. And I'm also okay with everything. Everything happens for a reason is a mindset that people talk about, and a lot of it I agree with. I love that mindset. It's because what do you gain from playing the victim? You gain a lot, but you gain nothing in the long run. You gain the comfort of the short-term prison that you've created for yourself, because it makes you feel certain of where you are. The uncertainty is the beautiful part of life. We can't control so many things. I probably should have weaved this more in the conversation in retrospect. However, on a pledge to judge myself less, I will not. But control is linked very heavily into all of this. Like, why do people choose to say things about me? How do I find my purpose? Being an athlete, getting injured, realistic mindset, being more patient. It's all about wanting control. Like, when we live in fear, the illusion is that we have control. So it's letting go of the fear, which lets go of the control as a byproduct. And how do I be more patient? I think you said it in the question itself. Like I said, the question is in it. Be. Just be. And stop trying to become. And As a result, things will take care of themselves. Yes, there are certain processes that need to occur, such as, like if I want the biggest podcast in Australia, for example, I can't do one podcast a month and, just hope that it's going to blow up. Yes, you put certain systems in, but there's a fundamental difference between wanting something and needing something. And it's an energetic difference. One comes from love, one is fear. It's being surrendering to the fact that what happens is meant for you and being curious and open-minded to explore the black inside of you, the darkness, and you'll discover the light. And there is a beauty in the black too, because without the black, you can't see the light. So we need both, and that's just the yin and yang of life. So yeah, that concludes this episode. Really enjoyed that. Really, really enjoyed that. I hope to do some more. If you love this episode, I would actually really appreciate some feedback. Like I said, it helps remind me that this episode is important and you guys like it, enjoy it, gain something from it, and it will inspire me to continue making more. However, we have some epic guests lined up and I'm really doubling down on some very topic-specific guests. Super excited for that part of the journey. However, I just feel like I've come out of a 50-minute solo meditation session. That was nice. Really enjoyed that, and I hope you gained something out of that. Just take one thing out of it, try it, reflect. And yeah, wishing you the best, sending love and positive energy. See you in the next episode. Peace.